A 19-year-old infantryman is standing in waist-deep snow in northern Norway, in the dark, at 4 in the morning. The temperature is -34. Wind is pulling heat off his face faster than his body can produce it. He has not slept more than 3 hours in any night for the last week. His rifle is slung across his chest under his white outer shell, kept warm by his own body heat. Behind him, his team is dragging 2 sleds, 90 pounds each, packed with rations, ammunition, and the heavy stove without which none of them will live through the next 24 hours. The platoon sergeant watches a private at the back stop moving. He watches him sway. He watches him, very slowly, sit down in the snow. And he knows that this man, who is about to fall asleep, is 6 minutes away from dying. But the truth is, this scene was not built in the field. It was built in a classroom in Alaska, on a frozen lake in Norway, on a glacier in California. Modern Arctic warfare training is not about toughness. It is about a precise, drilled set of skills that turn the cold from a death sentence into a workplace. To understand why modern militaries pour so much effort into Arctic training, you have to understand what the Arctic does to a normal infantryman. A regular soldier dropped above the Arctic Circle in winter, with no special preparation, can be combat ineffective in a matter of hours and dead in less than a day. Exposed skin freezes solid in under 1 minute at temperatures around -40. Sweat that pools inside layers turns to ice against the body. Boots designed for temperate climates conduct heat straight into the frozen ground. Rifles jam because their lubricants thicken. Batteries in radios and night vision drop to fractions of their rated life. Vehicles will not start. Hand grenades, body armor, and water bottles all behave differently. Almost every assumption that an army builds around equipment, food, sleep, and movement breaks down once the temperature drops below about -15. The Russians learned this in Finland in 1939. The Germans learned it outside Moscow in 1941. The Americans relearned it in Korea in 1950. Modern Arctic schools exist because every generation, when it forgets, pays for that lesson again in frostbite cases, lost limbs, and dead soldiers. So the modern answer is a small set of specialized training centers and large, repeating field exercises. In the United States, 2 schools carry most of the load. The Northern Warfare Training Center at Fort Greely, Alaska, runs the Cold Weather Leaders course and the Cold Weather Operations course, where soldiers learn to operate down to -50. The Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center in the Sierra Nevada trains Marines and Allied forces in deep snow movement, mountain skiing, and high-altitude operations. In Europe, Norway is the gold standard. The Norwegian Armed Forces train at Bardufoss and Setermoen, far above the Arctic Circle, and host the giant biennial NATO exercise Cold Response, which has now been renamed Nordic Response. Sweden runs cold weather courses in the north of the country. Finland, with its long border against Russia, treats winter operations as a baseline skill for almost every line infantry unit. Russia trains its own Arctic brigades on the Kola Peninsula and at Alakurti. Each of these schools shares a core philosophy. The cold is the first opponent. The enemy comes second. The first thing every student is taught is something almost nobody outside the military expects. They are taught how to be cold. The opening days of any serious Arctic course include what is sometimes called cold weather indoctrination. Students stand outside in their full clothing system at very low temperatures under direct supervision and learn to read their own bodies and their teammates. Instructors point out the white spot on a cheek, the wax-pale color of a nose, the sluggish stumble of early hypothermia. Students take off and put on layers. They feel sweat freeze inside a glove. They watch how fast a wet sock turns into a brick. The lesson is not bravado, it is the opposite. The cold is not something a tough soldier ignores. It is something a trained soldier monitors, second by second, in himself and in everyone around him. Most cold injuries do not happen because soldiers were brave. They happen because they were lazy, because they did not change a wet sock, because they did not eat, because they did not stop someone from sitting down in the snow when their eyes went distant. The first job of an Arctic soldier is to keep his teammates alive. Then comes the layering system, and it is treated almost like a weapon system. Modern Arctic militaries teach a 3-layer model, a base layer of synthetic or wool designed to wick sweat, an insulation layer, often fleece or quilted synthetic, which traps warm air, and an outer shell, windproof and water-resistant, often white for camouflage in snow. The principle is simple. A soldier does not dress as warmly as he can. He dresses as warmly as he needs. Move in too many layers, and sweat soaks the base. The moment he stops moving, that sweat freezes against his skin and his body temperature collapses. Norwegian instructors have a saying that captures the whole philosophy. Be bold, start cold. A correctly dressed soldier should feel uncomfortable for the first 10 minutes of a march and then warm up exactly into his pace. Every Arctic course drills this. Strip a layer before you sweat. Add a layer the moment you stop. Eat hot food the second the work ends. The drill is repeated until taking gloves off, opening a vent, and putting gloves back on takes seconds. Once students can stay alive standing still, they have to learn to move. In deep snow, a man on foot in normal boots is in trouble. He sinks to mid-thigh, exhausts himself in minutes, and turns into a sweat-soaked target. So the foundation of all Arctic ground movement is skis or snowshoes. Most NATO Arctic forces, especially the Norwegians, Swedes, Finns, and Marines, are trained on military skis. These are wider and heavier than racing skis, with strips of climbing skins that grip the snow on uphill movement. Students learn the kick and glide rhythm with a 40 to 60-pound rucksack on their back, often with a second 40 pounds in a pulk, the low plastic sled towed behind them by a harness. Long marches are normal. 20-kilometer movements with full combat load are routine in selection courses. Norwegian recruits in cold weather units have skied more than 100 kilometers across the mountains as a graduation event. Speed in deep snow, even for a fit, well-trained ski soldier, can drop below 1 mile per hour in bad terrain. Every Arctic soldier learns one cold truth early: there are no quick movements in winter. The clock works against you in a way it does not anywhere else. Once movement is solved, shelter becomes the next obsession. In every Arctic school, students learn that a tent is good, but not enough. They are taught to build snow shelters, fast, in the dark, with cold hands. The simplest is the snow trench, a coffin-sized cut in the snowpack, roofed with skis and tarps. The deeper version is the snow cave, dug into a drift, with the entrance below the sleeping platform so that warm air rises and stays trapped. The most elegant is the snow shelter, sometimes called a quinzhee or A-frame igloo, mounded up from snow, hardened and hollowed out. Properly built, these shelters can hold internal temperatures close to freezing, even when the outside drops below -40. That sounds modest until you remember that the difference between -2 degrees and -40 degrees is the difference between sleeping for 6 hours and dying. Norwegian and US instructors will sometimes wake a class at 2 in the morning and order them to dig new shelters in fresh snow. The lesson is simple. The day you cannot build a shelter in the dark is the day you should not be in the Arctic. If you are getting pulled into how this training actually works, hit subscribe so the next deep dive lands in your feed. The next half is where the real cold shock drills, the live fire exercises, and the final winter exercise come in. The single most famous drill in Norwegian and many allied Arctic schools is the ice break. A hole is cut in the ice of a frozen lake or river. The student, in full uniform, with skis on, rifle slung, rucksack on his back, is required to either fall in or step in deliberately. Once in the water, he has roughly 1 minute before cold shock overwhelms his ability to think, 2 to 10 minutes before his arms become useless. The drill teaches him an exact procedure. Get oriented, slide skis off, and push them out onto the ice ahead of him. Use ski poles to hook the ice. Kick to lift his torso. Roll, do not climb, onto solid ice to spread his weight. Crawl until he is well clear. Then strip the wet outer shell, change into dry clothing from a sealed bag in his rucksack, and continue the mission. Instructors stand by with safety lines, hot drinks, and warming tents. But the drill is not theater. It is the difference between life and death, the day a real soldier breaks through real ice while moving through real terrain. Soldiers who have done it talk about it the same way veterans talk about their first jump. It rewires something. After the ice break, the cold becomes a problem with steps, not a monster. Then the training shifts to the tools. And the cold has opinions about every one of them. Standard rifle lubricants thicken or freeze in extreme cold, which is why most Arctic militaries either run weapons dry or use specialized cold weather lubricants. Magazines are kept inside the outer shell, against the body, because a magazine left exposed for hours can develop frozen condensation that jams the feed. Soldiers learn to dry fire and clear malfunctions with thin contact gloves on, then quickly cycle to heavier mittens between contact moments. Optics fog the moment a warm face approaches a cold scope. Radios chew through batteries in fractions of their rated life. Drones lose flight time. Night vision tubes can freeze. Even body armor changes. Hard plates become more brittle in extreme cold, and webbing stiffens. So Arctic training spends a serious amount of time on small, boring details. How to keep batteries warm by rotating them between two pockets. How to brush snow off a weapon without driving it deeper into the action. How to clear a frozen ammunition belt on a machine gun. None of this looks dramatic on camera. All of it is the difference between a firefight and a frozen squad. Cold weather medicine is a discipline of its own. Combat medics in Arctic units are trained to recognize and treat injuries that hardly exist in temperate climates. Frostbite, where tissues freeze solid and can be lost permanently. Hypothermia, where core temperature drops and the body shuts down in stages. Trench foot and immersion injuries, where prolonged wet and cold destroy nerves and circulation. Cold weather injuries to lungs, where deep, fast breathing of very cold air damages the airway. Treatment is also different. A hypothermic patient cannot be rewarmed too quickly without risking cardiac collapse. A frostbitten foot must not be thawed if there is any chance it will refreeze before evacuation. Casualty movement itself is harder. Helicopter medevac may be impossible in a whiteout. Ground evacuation might mean towing a stretcher on a pulk for kilometers across frozen terrain. So Arctic medics train not just to treat, but to slow time. To stabilize, insulate, hydrate with warm fluids, and keep a wounded soldier alive for hours, longer than a temperate medevac would ever require. In the Arctic, a wound is rarely the most dangerous thing on a casualty. The temperature is. The vehicles, when they appear, are some of the strangest looking machines in modern military service. The most famous is the Norwegian BV-206, a tracked, articulated, all-terrain carrier that looks like two boxy cabins joined by a hinge, gliding across snow on wide rubber tracks. Its successor, the BVS-10 Beowulf, serves NATO Arctic units today. The Swedish CV-90, an infantry fighting vehicle, has cold weather variants designed to operate well below -40. The US Army uses the small unit support vehicle and is fielding new cold weather all-terrain vehicles. Russian Arctic units have specialized motorized sleds, BTR-class wheeled carriers, and tracked carriers tailored to permafrost. Aircraft and helicopters require their own discipline. Engines are preheated for hours before flight. Rotor blades are treated against ice. Fuel additives prevent gelling. Pilots train against icing in the airframe and against the visual disorientation of flat light. The vehicles are not what most people picture when they think Arctic. There are very few tanks. There are a lot of low-pressure, wide-tracked, slow, stubborn machines built to keep moving when nothing else can. Then comes one of the most disorienting parts of Arctic training: whiteout navigation. A whiteout is when blowing snow, low cloud, and uniform white terrain combine to erase the horizon completely. There is no up, no down, no distance, no direction. Pilots have flown into the ground in whiteouts because they could not see the moment when they were no longer in the air. Soldiers have walked off cliffs. So Arctic units drill land navigation in conditions that look like a sheet of white paper. They use compass and pace count, even when GPS is working, because GPS in modern war can be jammed or spoofed. They learn to navigate by terrain handrails, drainage features, and ridgelines that they cannot quite see but can feel through map and contour. They use rope lines between members of a patrol so that no one drifts away. In some training events, instructors deliberately trigger small group separations in safe terrain just to teach the team how to find each other again. Navigation in the Arctic is not a skill, it is a survival reflex. Lose it, and you do not just miss the objective, you do not come home. When all of this is brought together, soldiers run live fire training in deep snow, and almost every basic infantry tactic has to be rebuilt. In summer terrain, a squad disperses. In deep snow, dispersion is paid for in calories and exhaustion. Movement tends to channel into single ski trails because breaking new track is so much slower than following an existing one. Crew-served weapons, like machine guns and mortars, are mounted on snow platforms or pulks because their bipods sink into powder. Ammunition is heavier per round in real terms because every magazine has to be carried over a longer, slower distance. Sound carries differently in cold, dry air, often farther, but it bounces strangely off snowdrifts. White camouflage is enforced down to weapon slings, gloves, and even rifle muzzles, because a single dark band on a sling can show up at long range against pure snow. Fire and maneuver still works, but the timing is slower. Suppressing fire has to last longer because the maneuver element is moving through snow. Casualty drag is heavier. Reorganizing on the objective takes more time. Arctic infantry training does not throw out doctrine. It rebuilds doctrine to fit a world where moving 50 meters can take 3 minutes. The graduation event for all of this, in many countries, is a multi-day field exercise. In Norway, that exercise is now called Nordic response, the successor to cold response, and it has grown into one of NATO's largest cold weather exercises. Tens of thousands of soldiers from more than a dozen nations operate above the Arctic Circle for 1 to 2 weeks, often in the middle of winter, often in temperatures below -30. They live in tents and snow shelters. They ski, ride in tracked carriers, and fly in helicopters configured for ice. They run brigade and battalion-level scenarios against a simulated enemy force, often in coordination with naval and air components. The Marine Corps sends force units. The British send their Royal Marines, particularly 3 Commando Brigade, who treat Norway as their primary winter training ground. Dutch, French, Italian, German, and Nordic forces all rotate through. By the end, every weakness in the system shows up. The vehicles that broke, the radios that died, the unit that could not break a snow trail at speed, the one team that built sloppy shelters and ended up with frostbite cases. That is the point of the exercise. Better to fail in Bardufoss than to fail somewhere it really matters. When you watch a Hollywood movie about soldiers in the snow, you see white camouflage, breath in the air, and a few pretty shots of ski tracks across a moonlit valley. What those movies almost never show is the 15 minutes of swearing it takes to put on frozen ski boots in the dark. The small, careful ritual of changing wet socks before a sleep cycle, the painful hours of digging a snow shelter while your fingers stop responding. The boring discipline of brushing snow off a rifle bolt every time you stand up. That is where Arctic warfare is actually decided. Not in the muzzle flash, but in the layering system. Not in the firefight, but in the hot drink someone pushes into a freezing teammate's hand at 3 in the morning. The schools at Fort Greely, Bridgeport, Bardufoss, and the Kola Peninsula all teach the same hard truth from different directions. In the Arctic, the cold is the first enemy. The training works only when, by the end, that enemy has been reduced from a killer to a problem. If this look inside Arctic warfare training pulled you in, the best thing you can do is hit subscribe so the next story finds you when it drops. Smash the like button if this hit harder than you expected, because that small tap is what tells the algorithm to push videos like this in front of more viewers who care about how soldiers actually train. And drop a comment below telling me which part stayed with you the most. The icebreak drill, the layering system, the long ski marches, or the whiteout navigation, because I read every single one. Stick around, the world is colder than people think, and there is a lot more of it waiting for you on this channel.